Hey, Dad.
Hi, how you doing?
Good. So
Let's
Elise
go.
is on spring break, and today she wanted to go to the park in our neighborhood. And
Uh,
I said, "Hey, well, why don't you invite our neighbor to go with us?" This little 5-year-old girl lives across the street, and she's like, "I don't want to. I want to go by myself." I was like,
uh,
"Well, what do you want to do?" And she's like, "Well, you can play with me." And I'm like, "Well, I don't. I'm gonna sit there and watch you." And she goes, "I was like, why don't you want to bring her with you?" And she goes, "Because I want the swing all to myself." And I thought that's very appropriate for what I thought we could talk about tonight. Why are we so lonely? And I think a lot of us, there's this tension within us that we're like, I just kind of want to do my own thing. But then when you're doing your own thing, you're like, well, this is boring and lonely. But man, people make life so complicated. And I think I've been hearing a lot of people over the last year, for some obvious reasons, that are saying, I feel more alone than I've ever felt. And I thought we could address that. I mean, address some of that tonight.
sure. Well, of course, what I think of first of all is, the first thing that wasn't good on the whole earth, the Lord created. He said, "This is good. This is good. This is good." The first thing that wasn't good, He said, is man being alone.
Being
And
alone.
and the really weird part is, man wasn't alone. He had God with him. He walked with him daily in the evening. They had really close community and communion, and so he wasn't alone. But what the Lord said, he needs one like him. Like the
Mm.
tigers had tigers like them, female tigers like them, and so he said he needs one like him. And I think that's something I know. There was an old country song, me and Jesus got our own thing going. Me and Jesus got it all worked out. It just doesn't work that way. Even God said it's not good that you be alone, no matter how close you might be with me, which you're not as close as Adam was. And so
Yeah.
we need one another, especially we're talking to Christians. We're talking particularly, I mean, everybody needs other people. We all need community.
I mean, we're all made to need each other. Yeah. But there's some
Yeah,
commands in the Bible that say you got to get around people if you want to show you love Jesus.
right. You just can't have isolated Christianity because it's a family, it's a body, and you
Yeah.
can't cut your finger off and it won't survive for long. It may wiggle on the table a little while, but eventually it's going to die if it doesn't have that life that it's drawing from one another. And so I think a lot of the loneliness has been forced upon us because of just having to isolate and hide in your houses and fear. I mean, people, there's legitimate fear, and then there's kind of fear that goes a little bit beyond, and kind of
Yeah.
depends, what's right and what's wrong.
And what I've found is the more I separate myself from people, the harder it is to get back in the flow of being around people.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
And
We do tend to go. Well, some of us anyway. Maybe you and me. Maybe not everybody, but some of us do tend to.
I'm
We could
introvert
be.
leaning. So as an
Yeah,
introvert leaning person, I'm kind of like, oh wow, I guess I can do without people.
yeah.
Except Emily can tell when I haven't been around people yet.
And I'm the same way. It used to be when people would talk about, oh, you're thrown in solitary confinement. I'm thinking, wow, a week, dude, just to be by yourself. How
Some
awesome would
parents of
that
3 to 5 year olds
be?
would be like, solitary
Oh,
confinement. Yeah.
please, please, yes,
What
that'd be
who do I need to
awesome.
kill to get in
Yeah,
there?
yeah. But I found out during this pandemic, like the first week was really cool, stay home. Oh, wow, you got all this stuff you do. The second week was nice. By about the third week, it's like, oh, okay, I guess even us introverts need people,
Yeah.
you know?
One of the things I've noticed, been hanging out in the church now for 43 years here. Uh, that's my favorite line. I've been hanging out in the church is a lot of times when life gets hard and we start to struggle, one of the quickest first things we do is we cut off outside relationships.
Yeah.
I've seen
Mhm.
that a lot with people. And, there's a guy named Sean Acor. He wrote a book called The Happiness Advantage. And he said the number one predictor of success when you're under stress is pushing into social connection, which is the opposite of what most of us do. Most of us go,
Yeah.
I don't got time for people right now. We got some issues with us. And you just, marriage sometimes, I see that all the time. And then the lie you
Yeah.
start to believe is, well, I'm all alone and nobody understands my pain. And I
Yeah.
think that is where the enemy of your soul gets, man, he's got a foothold. As soon as you start saying that, I'm
Yeah.
all alone and nobody understands my pain, you immediately start to isolate yourself. It's Proverbs 18:1. It says, whoever isolates himself or herself seeks their own desire. They break out against sound judgment. Basically, it's not wise to isolate yourself, not only in the good times, but especially in the bad times.
Yeah. Yeah. And like you say, that is the natural tendency, is to want to isolate yourself when things aren't going well, because we want to look good. We want to make sure we're putting on a good front there.
And then we
Um,
wonder why we're lonely, though.
yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Or why nobody really is coming to my aid, because you're out there hiding in a corner. Nobody even knows where you are. So
Yeah.
I think there's another thing that's not even related to COVID that I think is causing a lot of people to feel lonely too. And it's what I see as a growing tendency in our society to only interact or engage with people who think like we do almost on every issue,
Yeah.
especially those hot button issues,
Well, I don't,
and
yeah, because I don't need the stress of their horrible opinions in my
yeah,
life.
I mean, they're just idiots anyway, because they don't agree with me.
Right, right.
And I remember, like when I was growing up, we would talk and, some guy would tell me what he thinks. Like, so you're an idiot. Here's what I think. And he'd say, well, you're an idiot. And then we go get a Coke together, and that was it. It's like,
Yeah.
we
Now,
just,
now
we
it's like, I'm
laughed and
canceling you from my life.
yeah, exactly. Because you're not just an idiot, you're evil. You are
Mm.
trying to destroy the world,
Yeah,
you,
anybody that believes that way is purely, obviously a Nazi, right? Or
yeah,
a communist or whatever. Yeah.
yeah. And
Yeah.
so in fact, I remember this old story. There was this social reform in the 1800s, cantankerous old guy. He got really frustrated with his business partner because things weren't going the way we were. And he looked at him and he said, all the world is strange except thee and me. And even thou art a little strange, So it's like, I'm the only one that's right.
Talk
And
about
so,
strange. Who talks like that? Oh, this was in the
well,
1800s.
this is the
Okay.
1800s. Yeah. So you
Yeah.
still read the King James Bible, it's
Thou
fresh off
thine.
the presses, yeah. And so, yeah, it's even thou art a little strange, um, and so when I'm the only one that's got it all figured out, we tend to be isolated. We tend to isolate ourselves. And so we do get lonely because the other thing is not only do we get lonely, but there's no one there to challenge our biases or prejudices. So we may feel very smug. We may feel very self-confident. We may feel very self-content, but there's nothing really challenging us. And we were meant to grow mentally by being challenged by
Yeah.
what we think.
That's another proverb. As iron sharpens iron, so one person sharpens another. And you're actually meant to bump up against people and it actually makes you sharper when you do that. But if you're just hanging around with, well, first of all, people that agree with you all the time, that will get a little lonely. You need a little bit of maybe fire in the relationship.
Yeah. A really good friend. I had a really good friend for a number of years ago, and we could disagree totally on things, but he would at least respect my opinion and I would respect his opinion. We didn't agree, but I could say, okay, I can see how you see that way. You're totally wrong, but I can see where you're coming from it,
So
and
somebody
he'd say
that
the
would
same thing. Mhm.
somebody that would say though, I literally don't have any friends. What's your take on that?
Well, there's a proverb that answers that too. It says, if you want to have friends, show yourself friendly. And there's another wise saying from an old country song. It said this, if nobody wants you, create the demand, And so if you begin to serve other people, you can make yourself irreplaceable.
Yeah.
If you just stop worrying about yourself and begin to just reach out and care for other people, all of a sudden you'll find out you really are needed. You're wanted.
We like being around people who are a life-giving presence. We all know the vortex, the people that you're like, stay 30 feet away from them. They'll suck you into their, But the people that are life-giving, that's true. So is this cold-blooded to say you're only alone if you want to be?
Well, they're probably generally, but I mean, there are such,
it is cold-blooded.
It's probably generally cold-blooded. It's probably generally true, but there's all kinds of other complications. Our own insecurities, we just kind of have to get over it. And it's easy to say, oh, just don't worry, be happy. Don't be insecure, be secure. Go out and make friends. Yeah, if it were that easy, and where do you connect with people? I mean, at church.
And I'll tell you, man, that is the greatest gift, I think, of the body of Christ, is that if you're really tied in with the church, you're always going to have even if your family's lame, you're always going to have a family you're going to have somebody to connect with. And that's the beauty of that's why it says, don't forsake the assembling of yourselves together. And which, unfortunately, because of the restrictions we had for a long time, we weren't able to do that. And you do it online, but it's not quite the same.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that's the wonderful thing about the church is you've got this community. And I think a lot of people maybe have stepped away from church and, it started out as precautionary and now it's just gotten real, I saw the less you go to church, the easier it is to not go to church. So, I wonder if maybe we've just kind of subtly, accidentally, it wasn't like an intentional decision, gotten out of that habit of assembling ourselves together. And that's a lot of the loneliness. And if you're not a Christian, I mean, even the social club things that you've been part of, there's a book a few years ago, Robert Putnam, he wrote Bowling Alone, and he's talking about how few people have social connections anymore. And it's gone down to like, I think like about 8 years ago, they asked people, how many confidants do you have? And like the majority of people said none. I have nobody.
Yeah.
So there is a push towards isolating ourselves, and we've got to be countercultural in many ways.
Yeah.
Because the natural result's going to be feeling alone.
Yeah.
And
Well, I'll just say, we were talking about people need to reach out, and that's easy to say and stuff, but it can be risky because you will get rejected. But, this is one of those cases where that statement, sometimes the riskiest thing you can do is to play it safe. That's one of these situations where it applies, is because if you're always playing it safe, you'll be safe by yourself in a corner. And sometimes you just have to reach out and risk it. And when you get slapped down, risk it again, just keep reaching out. And there are people out there that are many times just as lonely as you, but somebody has to take the first step. Somebody has to initiate the conversation and reach out and just introduce themselves and take the risk.
Yeah.
So take that risk.
Community takes work, and it's inconvenient, but it's totally worth it. Yeah. So, hey, if you've enjoyed this little short 12-minute podcast we've got a long form one. You can check that out on iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and a new one comes out every Thursday. So good talk today, Dad.
Yeah, we got some great podcasts coming up too. We've in the queue there. There's some really good ones. Yeah. Surprisingly, huh? Okay.
All right.
See ya.
Good talking to you, Dad. See ya.
Bye-bye.